Hello, everybody. Wanted to talk about something about truth, about veracity, about believability, reliability, trust. We base all of our assumptions about what's been going on something that's been roughly debated by the medical community prior to this time for a long time: germ theory. Germ theory typically wins out because it's got backing. It wins out over terrain theory because it has a lot of backing, because there's the ability to generate large incomes from germ theory and selling things, selling cures. We know this. The guy who came up with it was proven to be a liar, yet we still trust him. The news has been caught in lies multiple times throughout this, whether it's faking lines in a testing center early on, whether it's other sensationalistic stories that turned out not to be true, footage said to be from New York when it was in fact from Europe, footage in India from a gas leak that they tried to pawn off. It was a year old, and they tried to pawn it off as recent and blame it on this particular virus. And these institutions that lie to us like this still go on. We don't demand their utter destruction afterwards. We don't pull the charter. We don't say, you're out of here, you're fired. None of that. Now, I've done a lot of labor jobs. I've done a lot of service jobs. When I was a waiter, if I brought a wrong plate to a table once, okay, it's acceptable. Do it again to the same table, we got a problem. Do it every night, there won't be every night. I'm gone. I'm out of there. Out of there. And we have a system that lies to us repeatedly and has been caught in those lies, and yet we still go back to it. We still trust it. And this is a symptom of an abusive relationship, of trauma. This is a symptom of abuse, trauma-based mind control. That's what that is. That's exactly what that is. This abusive relationship plays out and is allowed to play out, or has the ability to play itself out, because of a phenomenon that has been slowly finessed in our society, in our culture, in our world, basically. And that's the phenomenon of the killing of the king. Killing of the king. You see it in movies where the hero or heroes of the movie are going up against the villain, the evil force, whatever it might be, and they decapitate or kill the leader of that force, and it takes all of the fight out of the rest of the force, which would previously have been insurmountable because of their attachment to that leader. And so the killing of the king, metaphorically and also literally, takes away that power, and the forces retreat. The killing of the king happens in real time, in real existence, in our existence. Also, Kennedy was a killing of the king. The Twin Towers was the killing of a king. The Twin Towers were a symbol. It was a beacon. It was the financial center of the world. Transactional center of the world. Business center of the world. And they came crashing down very easily. Very easily. Happened right after, roughly a year or so, maybe 2 years after the World Trade Organization protests that went on, as I recall. There have been multiple other small level as well as larger level killings of the king. And what it is it has slowly, when you add up all of these tragic moments, they slowly take the oomph out of a people. They take the power away. They take their fight out of them. Literally takes the fight out of them. The World Trade Organization protests were a little bit rambunctious, a little bit wily. Roughly, almost a decade later, I think it was roughly 10 years later. No, it was about 10 years later. The Occupy Wall Street protests occurred, and they were much more low-key. They didn't even want a leader. I remember when that happened, that was the new way to protest to organize an opposition movement, was to not have a leader. And I remember the spokespeople, who technically are leaders, but they were spokespeople of that organization, even touted that methodology as a very new and innovative and probably effective, even though it wasn't effective, obviously, methodology. And that was pulling the blankets over your head. That's what that was. That was pulling inward. That was curling up into the fetal position. The king had been killed multiple times up until that point, and especially with the changes that came after 9/11. 9/11, the trauma that was, and then all the changes that came along with that, and then this major crash that was really major, and they papered it over, and they propped up the economy in a false way, and it's really becoming apparent now. But those killings of the king they had denuded the people of power, and so they, with their last dying breath, they came up with this acephalous movement that was kind of pathetic in a lot of ways. I mean, it smelled from a distance. You can look at it and tell it was just rank. And beyond that, we had some offshoots, anonymous, and a couple of hacker groups, and that I think were ultimately a psyop and ultimately bullshit, because otherwise they have been utterly inactive in terms of what has gone on in the last year. And what has gone on in the last year has not engendered much in the way of protest. And this might be one of the final killings of the king. And they're doing it at an individual level as well. I'll talk about that in another time. But as of right now, it's a small matter.